with Specificity. I can see some people are still joining. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can get started. It is a quick 30-minute session today. I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes of what I hope will be a very engaging monologue, and then we're going to move into a 15-minute Q&A. So if you think of questions, just hang on to them. I won't be checking the Q&A until after I've run through the slides, but I would definitely love to engage further with this community. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Excellent, here we are. Okay, so writing satire with specificity. As I said, my name is Emily Menez. A bit about my background: I am from Kansas originally. I got my comedy writing career started just about 10, 11 years ago when I was interning in the script department of Saturday Night Live. It was an incredible experience, and from there, I went on to study improv and sketch comedy at the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York City, began putting up my own works, and then eventually moved to Los Angeles, where I studied at the Groundlings and started writing for CBS sitcoms. Since then, I've gone on to punch up works for CBS, for Nike, and recently I have started publishing satire. So, the main topic, let's get into it. What is satire? Well, Webster's dictionary defines satire as the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics or other topical issues. Ooh, okay, yes, and it was a little meta for me to include a Webster's dictionary definition of satire, but come on, it's a little fun. We got to do it at least once. But to me, I would say satire is simply looking the audience directly in the eye and saying something funny and true. I like to think about satire writers as the kind of people you might meet at a party. They maybe have like kind of a dark sense of humor. They're really specific about their viewpoint in the world, and they make you re-examine things you perhaps have observed in the world, but have never put to words. And that is the power of good satire. I've listed just 4 examples of pieces that have inspired me. Everyone's taste is different, but I know reading Stephen Colbert's book, I Am America, and So Can You, was a great study in how to bring a character to life with pathos and also ethos. I'll get into this later, but I think when you're representing a viewpoint that either you can agree with it or don't agree with it, but the most important thing is to keep it grounded, to keep your characters 3-dimensional and represent them like real people, right? So even if you don't agree with somebody, they might be an expert in something. They might have things that tick them off. Like when you get specific with your comedy writing, that's where it shines. Big Blonde by Dorothy Parker, just a classic example of a writer who wasn't afraid to take a heavy topic on. This is a short story about a woman who struggled with alcoholism and how society didn't really know how to address her, particularly as she got older. Again, this is not a topic that you would think would be ripe for comedy, but that is why satire is so amazing, because we are able to approach otherwise unapproachable topics. The White Lotus, amazing HBO show where they're skewering how rich people vacation, how they spend their time, and what they prioritize in their lives. I just think, a well-documented example of how television satire can speak to a wide audience. And then finally, on our right, we have a Selena Gomez sketch from SNL recently, where she is parodying Old Enough, which is a Japanese show where toddlers take a shopping trip by themselves for the first time. And in this sketch, we see like men in their 30s, like long-term boyfriends, going to the grocery store without their girlfriends. It's just a very funny way to skewer that. And I will say parody and satire are not actually the same thing. They live in a very similar space, but not to get too into that, but satire is when you're making commentary upon something, and parody is when you're going into the world building of something that already exists in pop culture. And that is a natural segue into our next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about pieces I've written over the last few years. No need to have read these in advance. I will provide a link at the end if you want to read them further. But I'm going to talk about what worked about them, how I structured them, And then, as I said at the end, you'll have the chance to read them if you'd like. But okay, pop culture with a point of view. When I'm approaching comedy writing, I tend to take my training from my improv background, and I want to take a premise I think is funny and then elevate it. So at the Upright Citizens Brigade, we always say you hit things on 3 levels. You get the game or the thing that's funny and unusual about the world out early, and then you just build upon it and you heighten and you heighten. And then the final piece should sort of thematically bring it together. And that is the magic of satire. So this first piece is called The Woman from Tom Petty's Free Fallin' Would Like to Clear a Few Things Up. Okay, so this is my McSweeney's piece, taking the lens of Tom Petty's classic song, Free Fallin', and examining what the muse might say back to him, right? So in the song, he's talking about she's a good girl, she loves America, she loves horses. He's kind of painting this woman through a very bland lens. It's a great song, but I always wondered when I listened to it, what would the woman say back? Like, are those the things she thinks are most interesting about herself? Because I would argue the answer is no. So that is my viewpoint into it. And then in that piece, I just take that idea and then I work within the lyrics of the song and I grab at all those specifics. Like, sure, yes, I like horses, but I've only ridden them once. And then, you can sort of, if you're learning structure, taking a song or a movie, that's a very natural way to learn how to craft your piece. And then speaking of movies on the right, I joined the cult from Midsommar, and it's not going that well. So this was for Slackjaw, which is a Medium publication. And I had seen the horror film Midsommar, and I was pretty disturbed by it, I think which is the correct emotion. It's a wonderful film. But I wondered what somebody who loves festivals like Firefest or Coachella or Burning Man, how they might observe Midsommar. And so again, going back to the Colbert example, I took a point of view that's not necessarily my own point of view, but I tried to give this person grounding, this happened to be a female protagonist, but what would she say about this? Like, ooh, they're doing this weird culty thing. And I think you can make fun of someone and still show them integrity as a character and make them 3-dimensional. All right, and then moving along. World building with a theme. Okay, so say you want to talk about a theme or a topic, but it's not pop culture related. There's plenty of room for that in satire. That first piece on the left is called How to Be a Mysterious Woman Who is Also in Bed by 9:30 p.m. This was my first New Yorker piece, and it is all about the idea that as an adult, you start to look at your friendships and go, oh, wow, I feel pretty isolated. I feel like people don't really care how I'm doing. Now, that is a very sad topic on its head, but it's also relatable. I heard a lot back on this piece, I think because people felt like, oh, why do I want to stay out late at parties like I did in my 20s when the people around me aren't necessarily as engaged as I had hoped. So I took that premise and I just built it out throughout the piece. And it was cool to see how many people also enjoy going to bed early. The answer is everybody. And then on the right, my piece, we as a collective audience have decided against saying good morning a second time. This was also for Medium, Slackjaw. And this is just speaking to, I think it's perhaps a thing that's specific in Western culture, but when you go to a seminar or a class, the teacher will stand at the front of the room and go, good morning, everyone. And then they'll get like a mumble, oh, good morning, good morning. I said, good morning. Can we do better? It's very annoying. Everybody hates it. And every seminar I go to, people, the speaker will say it. So I wondered, taking that idea, that's the topic, the game of the sketch, and then building it out. So if the audience were to sit down together and be like, yeah, we didn't like it when the speaker made us say good morning a second time, would they also agree upon other things? And what would be in that manifesto? So that is just a way to jump into the world of satire through 2 lenses. I think both of them are effective and fun. I'm going to move on to the last slide. So I have more things to say, but please jot down my website, my Twitter handle. I will open up the Q&A shortly, but sometimes If you're like me, you might think of a question later. Feel free to send it to me. I'm happy to answer them. And then I also wanted to share a resource I would recommend, which is called How to Write Satire. It's by the author Alex Baya. He's a peer of mine. He's a prolific writer who's been published in the New Yorker a million times. And if you just Google Alex Baya, that's Baia, and How to Write Satire, you'll come upon his website. I'll try to include the link if I can remember, but he goes in to this topic even further, breaking down how to do this. So it is doable. I know it sounds like a lot on its head, but the further you get into it, the more doable it is. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing these slides so I can just address some other things. There I am, big again. Hello, wearing a very green shirt. Okay, so I wanted to talk about writing efficient titles because that's something that has taken me years to figure out. First of all, take a look at the publication you are trying to get into. If you're looking at something like the New Yorker, their titles are not funny. They are more practical. Just go to their landing page at any time in the humor section. You'll see what I'm talking about. But they're not getting the premise of the piece out in the title necessarily. For other publications like McSweeney's or Slackjaw or the Belladonna comedy, the latter two both being Medium publications, it's really helpful to write out your premise in the title. Going back to my sketch background, that was the way to get the audience in on the theme of the sketch so that they could be laughing along at every following beat. And that's true when you're writing satire for publications as well. I also want to talk about just figuring out what it is you want to write about, which can be daunting at first. So I like to start with things that make me curious about the world around me, things that engage me with questions, things like, I wonder, like, why is that? Or how does that work? Why do people operate in that way? Another entry point might be anger. That really upsets me, this about the world. Why don't people take this more seriously? One quick note about writing with anger as a starting point. Anger is a very efficient tool to open up a piece, but don't just stop at anger. That becomes a rant, which can be healthy for a diary entry. But when you're trying to get published, you need to have more structure and you need to get more into the craft of it. So make sure that you are elevating the idea, right? So going back to the definition of satire, how do we elevate it? How do we build it out? And how do we pull like a thematic thread throughout? And then I would just say another big thing is when you're at the beginning of your career, it can take a long time to find your writing community, but it isn't impossible. As I said at the beginning, I'm from Kansas. That is not known. Well, we do have some good comedians from there for sure, but we're not most known for our comedy scene. So I think it's just about finding the people around you who understand your sensibility, who are willing to engage with you and give you good feedback. Taking classes. There's a lot of great resources online like this one, but there's also, just keep trying to find your comedy people, figure out what it is you want to say about the world around you. I have so many other things I could monologue about, but I think I'm going to open up the Q&A. Okay, so we have our first question. I'm just going to read it live and we'll think it through together. When I try to write humorous satirical pieces, I end up mimicking Robert Benchley's style. Is that a bad thing? Is Benchley considered a satirist? I'm going to be honest, I'm not super familiar with that author, but I don't think it's bad at all to emulate the style of anyone else, because what you're going to end up doing is be bringing your own things to it, right? Like whatever things that make you tick, you may feel like you're just straight up copying another author. I guarantee you it's going to sound different coming out of your voice. So it's okay if at the beginning you're like, I want to write like X person. I know when I first started writing, the person who was inspiring me was David Sedaris. I have a bunch of books next to me. They are my friends on my desk. And Squirrel Seeks Chipmunk was one. He's not a satire writer. He's more of short stories, autobiographical, diary entries. But, you can learn how to write funny from all sorts of writers. I've learned a lot from Stephen King, and he does mainly horror. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong, to answer that question, with emulating other people's style. I'm going to drop in the link to Alex Baya's piece I mentioned. And then if anyone else has a question, please feel free to throw it in there. Let's see here. Okay, great. That it says it's in review, which I can only assume means that you all can see it. And that's what we're going to assume. I'm seeing another chat. I saw David Sedaris not long ago. He was hilarious. I agree completely, Nicole. I saw David Sedaris at the Brooklyn Academy of Music years ago. And, you know, again, when you're a great writer, I think you also can become a great presenter and speaker. And he is one who is both. I love his style. While we're getting more Q&As going, I'd love to just share some other resources that have helped me over the last few years. This book is called Comedy Write. If you guys can see this, I don't know if it's flipped. Comedy Writing for Late Night TV. When I took NBC's late night writing course, they recommended reading this book. It's by Joe Toplin. He's an old school Letterman writer, but a lot of these exercises are super helpful, especially if you're interested in breaking into the late night comedy scene, but it definitely applies to satire as well. Okay. We couldn't see the questions in the Q&A until you approve them. Thank you. That is helpful to know. Okay. I'm approving it. Guys, I'm learning as I go. Approve. Done. Okay. Those are, now that we know that. Your message is not showing because you cleared the chat. Oh, okay. Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. I think that they are showing up now. So feel free to throw a question out there if you like. Okay. Oh, other pieces that have inspired me while we're getting those going. Again, not necessarily satire, but writing niche comedy, The Awkward Thoughts of W. Kumeo Bell. This is just, he makes the kind of comedy that's, I don't know if it would be for everyone necessarily. I love it, but it's very encouraging when you're at the beginning of your career, in particular, trying to find an audience for the kind of work you do, that you just need to keep going. And something else he talks about is getting feedback from people all around you, taking hard notes. I would just say when you are taking notes, it's important not to look at it as being a good student where you're just literally taking every note, because your piece will start to get watered down naturally. I know that's happened on my own end in classes. I think what you need to examine when you're looking at a note is this something that's going to help my piece be better, or are they giving a note that would be right for their piece? Which is, you know, people aren't trying to be unhelpful, but it does happen that way sometimes. Let me see here. What else do I have? Oh, I want to talk about, so if you're starting your writing from something that bothers you about the world, something that angers you, I absolutely think it's possible to do it. And I think an example of authors who have done that very well are Amber Ruffin of the late night scene and her sister Lacey Lamar. They have two books. This one is You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey, and the World Record book of Racist Stories. Very funny writers. They're taking what would feel like just a sad topic, and some of them, the stories are upsetting and sad, but it's allowing you to examine them and really get a great perspective on them. I loved reading that book. And then in terms of a book that offered more of a, I don't know how to put this, like a topic that might not seem funny initially. Dead People Suck by Laurie Kilmartin is a very funny book on grieving and on death. Laurie Kilmartin was a writer for Conan for years and wrote a piece after her father passed away about all of the absurd scenarios you find yourself in when you lose somebody you love. And I think that's very cathartic to write that way. So again, I'm just trying to offer some entry points when you're getting into satire, because there's a lot of great ways to get there. What if you're comedically challenged? This is a new question that I'm going to approve. Thanks, everyone. Tips on how to find humor in things. Okay, that's a great question. And thank you for being honest. Okay, well, I would, based off the way you phrased that question, I would say you're not comedically challenged, but I would say if you feel like you're not a naturally funny person, you can still start in the same places I suggested, like what bothers you about the world, or what would you like to learn more about? a lot of the writing I've been doing recently is on historical pieces, like writing from the perspective of Eli Whitney, who invented the cotton gin, things I just wanted to learn more about. And it's totally fine if you don't have jokes when you start out. You can just start by writing sentences on a page. Sometimes it's just about getting the discipline down of learning to write. And I think that as you start to develop it and get feedback from people you trust, the jokes will come naturally. I've gotten to the point now with myself where I just trust that even if the first draft isn't funny, which it often isn't, it will get funny by the third draft. Or, go for a walk and think about it, and you will find something that makes you laugh about it. And if it's still making you laugh on draft 3, it's probably funny. Okay, I'm seeing something new in the chat. Question to anyone. Okay, this looks like it's more specific about recordings. I do know that a lot of these recordings will be available on YouTube, so I'm sure the Medium team will offer links on how to arise from those. But yes, that's a great question. There's all sorts of great topics being discussed today. We are just at the under 10-minute mark left before the session ends, so I want to encourage anyone who's got a question or a topic they'd like to bring up, feel free to throw it in the chat. Otherwise, I am happy to monologue into my computer. I'll just talk about some stuff I've learned through my improv and sketch training. And in the meantime, if anyone throws a question out, I'm happy to go to that. When I was at the Groundlings, something big I learned about writing was that, especially if you're writing a longer piece like a script, it's good to let the dialogue heavy scenes have breathing room, right? So if you're writing a scene where 2 characters are talking a lot, have the next scene be one where they're just looking out at the ocean, or they're just taking a walk, or they're just riding in the car and they're looking out the window. I think it's really important, especially with any piece that has a lot of words in it. If you're you can space it out. And specifically with satire, if you're writing like, I'm thinking like a world building piece of like a how-to piece. If step 1 is really wordy, make step 2 like 1 or 2 sentences. Let your ideas breathe. Any suggestions for good improv training online? Okay, that's a great question, especially now in the pandemic world we're living in, where you can get so many great resources online. The Groundlings offers fantastic classes online. They also offer scholarships because their classes do tend to be in the $300 range for like an 8-week class. So if that's something that appeals to you, but you don't have the finances, please check out their website. They do offer really good fellowships for talented people. I love the Groundlings. I've read both of Amber Ruffin's books and love that you mentioned them. I want to know some techniques you use to go from angry to funny. Great question. Thank you again. So yeah, I think that part of it is just processing the thing that makes you angry, right? So whether that's talking to a close friend or a spouse or whoever you trust in your life, a therapist, and as you're processing what really upsets you about it, I think the further you get into that is the more where you're going to start pulling up like how to deal with it mechanisms. And I think that that's really relatable for people. Going back to my New Yorker piece, I know when I talked about the feeling of, being disappointed by your friends as an adult, that I heard from a lot of people about how like, hey, yeah, I'm disappointed when I go to parties too. No one really is asking, like they're not listening when I ask them questions or when I answer their questions. So I think there's some vulnerability in sharing things that upset you about the world. But if you're at a place where you feel safe talking about it, that's when it starts being more functional in my comedy, at least. Just again, make sure it's something that you're comfortable talking about. Yes, of course, happy to refer any improv classes. I think, especially at the beginning of your career, it's so good. That's like such a great way to meet other people in the community. Okay, cool. How do you steer clear of being a snarky, ugly person? Any suggestions for keeping it nice but funny? Oh, that's a great question, Cynthia. Thank you for asking. A snarky, ugly person. Okay, so I would say this is like sort of a criticism of a lot of late night comedy sometimes. It's that it's not adding enough to the topic. I think you also move into like hack territory sometimes when you're just saying like, oh, I don't like whatever this thing is. It makes me unhappy. That's when you start getting just snarky. And I find sarcasm is the lowest level of humor. This is just in my opinion, because you're only commenting upon something that already exists versus offering up. Oh, I didn't approve that question. My apologies. Versus offering up suggestions or ways to improve it. I think it's like anything in life. It's like examining, okay, maybe this thing upsets me, but okay, how would I fix it? Especially when you're getting into political humor, that's where it often ends up feeling a little bit snarky, I think. But then you can get really specific about if you're trying to improve a system that you feel is failing you or failing other people, you can start talking about like, okay, well, if I were president or if I were this, how would I do it? And that's funny too, because it's like some of these systems are really complicated and hard to address. That's how I avoid being snarky. But who knows? Hopefully that answer didn't appear snarky. Okay, going back into the Q&A. How much do you rely on, oh, again, I'm going to approve this question. I am learning as I go. How much do you rely on feedback from other writers or friends or family when you first come up with material? Excellent question. I would say when you're in the very beginning phase of writing and you're not sure that your piece is yet ready for the heavy criticism of others, it's then if you know in your gut, if it doesn't feel like it's ready to go out into the world yet, if you don't feel like you could quite defend it, then maybe it needs a few more weeks to craft. I've found the stuff that I've written that does best, it just takes months to write, and that is okay. So to answer that short question in a long way, I would say wait until you feel that it's ready to be defended, or that you are at least getting across the main thematic points you want in it, and then it's probably ready. But I would be careful who you send it to for your initial notes. Try to send it to people you think understand your sensibility, or at least are creating the kind of content you would like to emulate yourself. I know, again, like in my early years with comedy training, sometimes it was just, it's a season where you don't have those collaborators around you. So you can learn from everybody in different ways, but it's something that I feel like the longer you stay in it, the more you will find people who understand what it is you're trying to do. Okay, we're coming up upon 2 minutes. So if anyone has a question, oh, I see one, and I'm going to approve it. Is it normal for your best work to not be your favorite work? Oh, I love that question. That's so smart. Your best work. So I assume when you're saying best, you mean the work that other people regard as your best work versus the one that you personally feel is your best. I'm so reminded of when artists, like, I'm thinking of when Billy Joel tours or does like Madison Square Garden, is like, I've played this song 10,000 times, but it's the one that resonates with people. I think you can have like your B-side, if you will, favorite piece that doesn't necessarily resonate with people. And like, I don't know, like I know if I'm doing a public speaking event, I try to get out the ones that have done the best or have made it in the biggest publications, but I also sneak in like the little ones that didn't do great, or like only got a few claps on Medium, because I do think it's like one for them, one for you. And if you still love it, there's probably something worth exploring there. Okay, we are coming up upon the last minute. This has been so awesome. I'm seeing there's 60 people in here right now. I definitely thought it would just be my mom. Thank you all so much for coming. Again, feel free to reach out with any questions. You have my website, and happy writing. Thank you all for being here. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.